next, we have the host of the This Week in Despair podcast. Give it up for Peter John Byrnes.
All right, host, great. You give it up for yourselves. Enough pleasantries. And I know that I speak quickly, people, but you could also listen faster. Ladies and gentlemen, I am here to interrupt this little comedy show because I'm here to give you a public service announcement. I need all of you to stop going to the most sick and disgusting site on the internet. And I know there are some pretty sick ones out there. But there is one that is above all the rest. Ancestry.com. Because Ancestry.com is where you go to find out all the shit that your forefathers didn't want you to know. You want to find out that your great-uncle served time in a VA hospital for shell shock. That your grandmother gave up a mixed-race baby for adoption in the 1930s. That your second cousin once removed met his wife in a house of ill repute. Ancestry.com. And I'm just talking to the white people here. Because only white people go to Ancestry.com. Because everyone else knows that shit gets grim in a hurry. And only white people think they're special enough. Only white people go to past life regression. White people go, oh, I was Marie Antoinette in a previous life. You were not. You were a 19th century tubercular baby that went early. Look, here's how you know if you're special if you're a white person. Is there a Roman numeral at the end of your name? No? Then no. Because it means you're not a pope, a king, or a wasp. And all of those people have their histories written down for them. They don't need to go to Ancestry.com. Look, here's the history of white people in America. I'm going to save you all a little bit of time so you don't have to go to that site. Your great-grandfather grew up in some Eastern European hellhole where he worked in a dirt mine. And every week, he was paid with a medium-sized potato and a handful of gravel. Bear with me. The medium-sized potato he had to share with his 11 brothers and sisters. And the handful of gravel was for throwing at anybody that tried to steal his fucking potato. And when he learned there was a magical place called America where he didn't have to sleep on a mattress stuffed with dysentery, he ran out of that Eastern European hellhole you're trying to rediscover on Ancestry.com as fast as he could. And that name you're trying to reconstruct so you can finally have a beer mug with your crest on it? He thought so little of that last name that he let them saw the last 3 syllables of it off at Ellis Island like a Civil War soldier's gangrenous green leg. Yeah, it says here your name is Katzenfuhrer Openplatz. Yeah, we're going to call you Katz. Hey, that's a fine by me, boss. And yes, I gave your great-grandfather an Italian accent and a German last name, but that's because he was Swiss. So he moved into the tenements where they had hot and cold running lice. He married your great-grandmother because she came from the old country too. They spoke the same language and she made that dish he liked that smelled like feet. And then he got a job in a dirt factory. That was an upgrade. But it was still a shitty job. Then they had your grandfather. Your grandfather, he was like a cop or a barber or something like that. He worked on his feet and he hated people. So he had a less shitty job. He moved out of the tenements and into a part of the city where he lived with members of his own ethnicity, but they still lived close enough to other neighborhoods with other members of ethnicities to keep that good European tension going. And then they had your dad. Now your dad had a pretty good job. He was like a vice executive. You were never really sure. Now, he always claimed he wanted your grandfather's shittier job because it was more blue collar and more honest. And that was bullshit because your grandfather, the cop, never got a weekend cabin or a sailboat on his shitty salary. They moved you out to the suburbs where there was no ethnicity at all. Well, I mean, you had to be white. And then they had you. You poor millennial son of a bitch. And you work in a call center. Which means you have a shitty job. Time's gone backwards. You hipsters are drinking PBR, a drink that your great-grandfather would have spurned, and he drank his beer out of a galvanized bucket. You're hoping to move to a hip part of the city, a part of the city that your grandfather, the cop, only would have traveled to beat people up recreationally. And you're so proud of being part of the hookup generation, you don't realize that your suburban parents have been playing strip twister with the Johnsons down the cul-de-sac since the 1970s. And let's look at your shitty job. I mean, soul-destroying and ego-crushing it might be, but it has endless rivers of coffee and cloth-covered cubicle walls. And when was the last time someone lost a foot at your job making a spreadsheet? Probably weeks. Which means your shitty job is the kind of shitty job that your great-grandfather would have sold your great-grandmother into sexual slavery to his foreman at the dirt factory in order to get. Because your great-grandfather was an asshole. And that's the history of white people in America. That's why you don't go to Ancestry.com. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been Peter John Byrnes. Thank you very much.
Peter John Byrnes, ladies and gentlemen.